In a world where chronic diseases continue to rise, a new approach to healthcare is emerging, one that empowers individuals to take control of their health through lifestyle changes. In this interview, I'll sit down and talk with Dr. Stephen Neabore, an expert in lifestyle medicine from Monument Health. Doc Talk is coming up next. Welcome to Doc Talk, a weekly podcast featuring Monument Health physicians addressing medical topics. Tune into your health with Monument Health. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Doc Talk with Monument Health. My name is Mark Houston, and joining me again is Dr. Stephen Neabore, who is a diplomate of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. Completed your training in New York and D.C. and Maryland, and then you came out here to the best part of the Dakota, Western Dakota, South Dakota. Glad to have you back on the show, Doctor. Yeah. It's so nice to have you back. Last time we were talking about kind of lifestyle medicine in general, which is what you practice, right? So growing up, were you a child of perfect exercise and perfect health and eating all the right things? And
I was pretty active as a kid. I played a lot of sports, but as far as eating, there was probably some room for improvement. I can remember my grandmother, taking us out to a certain fast food restaurant with golden arches as a treat. Won't name drop at all. Right. And I didn't think anything of it. That was just a fun thing to do. And, eat candy bars. I mean, whatever, just do what normal kids did.
Right. Were your parents relatively healthy people too? I mean, were they active and outgoing and tried to get you to eat right, or were they just like the rest of us?
Yeah, they were. I mean, they weren't professional athletes or anything, but yeah, they were generally healthy. Okay. I mean, I think we did pretty well. Right. But not anything that would be considered extreme probably by most people.
So you, like I said, you're a doctor that specializes in lifestyle medicine. Can just really briefly, can you just kind of explain what that is again, if people didn't hear the last episode?
Sure. Yeah, it's the practice of using evidence-based medicine to try to optimize health as much as possible, to prevent and reverse disease.
So let's get into really kind of the meat of all of this. Okay. Now, are there more than 6 of these disciplines, I guess, for lack of a better word? Or how do you said you group these? You don't necessarily consider them pillars.
Yeah, I mean, and, I do kind of borrow in my own practice. I kind of borrow a little bit from American Heart Association. Okay. Theirs is a little bit more kind of numbers based. Like they say your blood pressure and your blood sugar and your cholesterol should be at these values. I think of those as kind of like secondary endpoints, though. So if you are truly putting in the effort, you're eating right, you're exercising, you're getting to a healthy body weight, those things tend to follow. So if somebody is morbidly obese and they're dealing with insulin resistance, which is diabetes, and they're dealing with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and they start really making optimizations in their life, and they're eating better, and they're getting some exercise, and they're really working on reversing those health issues, those values tend to improve along with them. Depending on how long they've had those issues, they might still need some pharmaceutical therapy along the way. But almost invariably, you'll see improvements in those values as health is improving. Okay,
well let's just start with I think a good place to start, because we've talked about that quite a bit, is just the nutrition, right? Just what you eat in general can make a big difference. Sure. So there must be specific dietary approaches or patterns that you recommend, right?
Yes. I think the first kind of rule that I try to give patients, I don't know, rule is kind of a harsh term, I guess, but is really try to avoid processed foods. So if it's made in a factory somewhere, you can't really improve on nature. Right. It's unlikely that the final product is going to be better than the raw ingredients that came out of it. In fact, sometimes it's even unrecognizable. If you think of a candy bar, like what did that start out as, right? I mean, it came from nature originally, right? I mean,
there's an argument to be made for that,
yeah, but it's so highly processed. Imagine if you took somebody, you had a time machine, and you grabbed somebody from 1,000 years ago, and you showed them a candy bar. They would have no idea what they were looking at, right? I mean, they would literally not know what it is. And so in a sense, this is always kind of a weird way to phrase it too, but I think of like a human diet. And so I don't mean eating humans. Please don't eat humans. But like every animal in the world has its diet, right? The cows eat grass, the squirrels eat acorns, the giraffes eat the leaves off the trees. And so you could think about like, what is a human designed to eat? And so we've been on this planet for thousands and thousands of years without factories, without, processed foods. So what did we eat originally? Well, you can look at it as, what didn't we eat? First of all, we're really not carnivores, despite what the carnivore diet enthusiasts might tell you, I can't run up to a deer and take a bite out of it. I
Right.
mean, I don't think I could catch a squirrel, right? I mean, even a cow. I can't run up to a cow and take a bite out of it.
You can run up to them,
Right.
but yeah, the chewing is difficult.
Right. So if you compare us, we need weapons to catch animals, basically. I mean, unless you have a farm where they're enclosed. We need to skin them. We need to cook them over a fire so we don't get parasites, right? I mean, if you compare that to a bear or a wolf or a lion, they're not doing that.
Right.
So we're not really a carnivore. So what did we eat? Well, you can imagine people basically were walking around and would pick stuff up and eat it. So what is there to pick up and eat when you're walking around? There's fruits, there's berries, there's leaves, which are modern day vegetables. And when you compare our teeth and our digestive system to other animals, we are much more in line with those basically plant-eating animals.
Well, are there meats that we can eat that are generally considered to be, I mean, like for protein alone? I mean,
Yeah.
Are there meats that are okay?
Well, I mean, those are kind of two different questions.
Sure.
So as far as meat, I mean, I'm going to get a lot of kickback on this one, but it's hard to argue for health benefits for meat.
Okay.
When I think about healthy foods, to me, that means the more of it you eat, the healthier you get. And if you told me, hey, I eat one steak every night, what if I eat two every night? It would be really hard for me to make any kind of argument saying that would be a good thing.
Right.
And I think probably most doctors would be in agreement with that.
Sure.
As far as the protein aspect, I think a lot of that, again, is marketing. There's kind of they call it a halo effect on protein. If you see something in the store and it says extra protein, you look at it and go, oh, I should get that, right?
Right.
But why? I mean, we don't have a protein deficiency.
Right.
When you look at somebody who literally has a protein deficiency, they're starving. That's somebody who's dying of a terrible disease or just malnourished. That's what protein deficiency looks like.
Okay.
For the rest of us, I mean, you can look at somebody and decide if they're getting enough protein or not. I can look at you and say, you're getting enough protein.
Sure.
And so then there's really no need for more protein because you're already getting enough. And in fact, every food out there has protein in it, aside from maybe some of the really highly processed ones.
I guess I never thought of that.
I mean, every fruit, every vegetable, I mean, every grain, every food has protein in it.
Okay.
So we're really not lacking for protein. And in fact, if you want to make an argument about macronutrients, you could say, where do you get your fiber from? I mean, the American diet is terrible with fiber. I mean, a lot of people are getting single-digit amounts of fiber.
Well, how much are we supposed to have?
Well, it depends on where what you look at. If you look at the governmental guidelines, it's something like 10 to 20 grams of fiber, something like that.
But it's obviously more is what we need.
Well, if you look at our ancestors, again, going back in history,
Yep.
You look at the caveman drawings and stuff like that, they had massive faces.
Right.
Because they spent all day chewing. And so the stuff that they ate just was loaded with fiber. Some estimates are that they got 90 to 100 grams of fiber. I mean, I would bet essentially any amount of money that you could not, and probably I couldn't either, eat 90 to 100 grams of fiber in a day. I mean, it would be virtually impossible.
Right.
I mean, you'd be eating the most fiber-rich foods and chewing just all day.
Yeah.
So
well, you keep, what's in, okay, and I have to get this question out of my head right now. You go back to our ancestors and you go back to thousands of years ago.
Yep.
And people didn't live as long back then.
Yeah.
Right? Even eating this way, right? And exercising and doing those things.
Right.
So if somebody comes to you with that question, how do you...
Yeah, I mean, so people, you could die from an animal attack or a snake bite, right? So in the modern world, I mean, we're lucky we have modern medicine. And modern medicine certainly changes lives and saves lives, and I'm not opposed to modern medicine. I love modern medicine. It's what I do for a living.
Right.
If you're having a heart attack, get over and get a stent in there, open it up, right? I mean, that's great. Do that. If somebody gets hit by a car, take them to the ER, do whatever you need to do. As far as maintaining health, though, in those cultures, when people make that argument about people didn't live as long, it was more of a divide. It was kind of a bimodal distribution. People either died young from diseases of childhood or infections, or they did actually live longer lives. If they died from an infection, I mean, obviously they're not going to live as long,
right?
But their risk of heart attack and cancer and stroke and diabetes was so much less. And we know this because we can study cultures that still live the same way. I mean, there's cultures in Africa and Central America where they're basically living the same way that they did, thousands of years ago.
Right.
There was a famous doctor in medical school. We learned about Dr. Burkitt. I believe he was British, and he studied he worked in Africa. And he was astounded to see that people didn't end up with hemorrhoids. They didn't end up with diverticulosis. They weren't dying of heart attacks. I mean, could you imagine going to a hospital and nobody's dying of heart attacks? I mean, this was decades ago. I think it was in the 30s or 40s or something like that, or 50s maybe. But I mean, he was comparing the African civilization there, or wherever he was living, African village, to the modern kind of like British society.
Right.
And just stark differences there. So that was one of the clues of like, hey, maybe there's something that people are doing different in modern society compared with how people have been doing things for thousands of years. And so that kind of was one of the things that started that study of looking at kind of how ancient people have lived.
Okay. So we're pretty, I think all of us understand that, yes, our diets are probably not as good as they should be here, especially in the States, right?
Sure.
I think we have that in our brain, and we know, and I think a lot of people take steps to try to remedy that.
Yeah.
But I think the big one on this list of all of these is the exercise, the physical activity.
Okay.
We know too that yes, we need to do this.
Yeah.
But how can that really impact just your overall health? I mean, it seems.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think we know the answer.
Yeah.
But
exercise is great. I mean, all of these things, all of these 6 steps are super important. I would honestly put food as number 1.
Right.
Okay. And then put, it's hard to really quantify the other
Sure.
one. I mean, you could argue, well, if you're not sleeping, then you're not going to follow a healthy diet. And you could argue, well, if you're super stressed out or you're smoking 2 packs a day. So it's kind of hard to say like one is more important than the other. They are really all truly important.
Yeah.
I spend most of my time talking about diet just because sometimes it's quicker to just say, well, stop smoking, right?
Right.
Even though we do spend quite a bit of time sometimes talking about that. Exercise, tons of benefits for really everything. I mean, good heart health, even mental health. There's been studies out there showing that exercise, when compared head-to-head with antidepressant medication, can be just as good, assuming you're getting your half an hour a day, 5 days a week.
Right.
You can imagine nobody ever says, I regret doing that workout, right? I mean, I've never met anybody who said, oh, I wish I hadn't gone to the gym, right? I mean, like, unless you get injured.
Well, I don't know.
Right?
Maybe.
People don't really regret working out,
Sure.
right? So you
That's
have
true.
obviously heart benefits there, brain benefits. It's good for your metabolism. It's good for maintaining healthy body weight, muscle mass, bone health. I mean, the list goes on.
You could go on.
Definitely get that exercise. Get your at least a half an hour a day, at least 5 days a week at a minimum.
Right.
It sounds like a lot for people, but if you think about like what is your day filled with, there's probably some time where you can squeeze in a little bit in there, even if it's 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the evening.
So let's move then to the risky substances.
Yes.
Right. Smoking, obviously. I think we have done a pretty good job here in the United States of cutting back on smoking.
Absolutely.
Boy, you hardly see anywhere anymore compared to you go to Europe.
Sure.
And they,
Sure.
God, they smoke like
Yeah.
they breathe, right?
Yeah.
But here I think we've done a pretty good job. But I know a lot of people are most worried about, well, I like to have a drink. I like to do that every once in a while.
Yeah.
Is there, because the question there people are going to want to know, is there an acceptable amount?
I'm going to rain on your parade again.
I know you are.
They used
That's
to
all right.
say no more than 14 drinks in a week, no more than 3 drinks in one sitting.
Okay.
Then they recently kind of revised that to say there's not really a safe amount. They used to say, a glass of wine is good every day.
Right.
What happened was there was kind of what they call a J-shaped curve, where they found that your best kind of mortality or best health was at 1 drink a day, and your health was actually worse if you had 2 drinks or 3 or 4, and it was actually worse if you had 0. The problem was they left in people with chronic health issues. So if you have heart disease and kidney disease and liver disease and you're not drinking at all, you're still factored into that.
Oh.
And so those folks obviously are going to have worse outcomes than people who are basically healthy but having 1 drink a day.
Right.
And so when you adjust that model and you take those people with chronic health issues out of that, it's no longer a J-shaped curve. Now the curve goes straight down. And so your best health is at 0 drinks.
Even like maybe one a week. I'm just trying to find a number I can be happy with.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think if you have an occasional drink, it's going to kill you.
Right.
But alcohol is a poison. I mean,
Right.
it does tax your liver even a little bit. So again, it comes back to that question we talked about originally of like how competitive are you with yourself? How healthy? Like how close to that line do you want to get? And so I can't answer that for you. You need to answer that.
All right.
I mean, I have maybe a couple drinks a year. I'm not going to say I never drink,
Right.
but pretty infrequent.
What do you have when you have those couple of years? What is it?
Whatever. I don't know. It's usually in some social setting.
All
and
right.
then somebody hands me
Something?
I don't know.
Okay.
I poured you this glass of wine or something. But I mean, I think if I bought a bottle of wine, it would literally last me an entire year.
Wow.
I mean, I think I have a 6-pack in my basement that I bought when I moved here, and I think I've had 2 of them. Not 6 packs, like
right,
2 beers
of the
in the last 4 years. So
the other one on this list now is and I like that it's not good sleep.
Yeah.
It's restorative sleep.
Yeah. I like that you noticed that.
There must be a difference.
There's a difference. Yeah. And a lot of times I try to tell my patients, don't confuse being asleep with being unconscious.
Right.
Okay. Because there's a lot of stuff out there that'll make you unconscious. I mean, you could fall off the roof and you'll be unconscious, but it's not sleep. Mm-hmm. Right. You can have surgery. Usually the anesthesiologist is not going to say, yeah, you slept great, you feel restored like
right.
$1 million. And so there's medications out there that people sometimes end up using, but I always kind of caution people, there is really no true substitute for genuine, restorative, authentic sleep.
Well, I know melatonin's been a big thing recently.
Melatonin, I mean, if you need to use it, use it. Obviously, people staying awake all night is pretty miserable.
Yeah.
We're all going to sleep eventually. I mean,
right.
we can't go forever without sleeping. That's always kind of a hot topic to discuss because it can get pretty emotional when people are really not sleeping. So sometimes we do help them out with some medications, but I never look at that as like a long-term thing. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, here, take this medication forever. But I do see people sometimes that have been taking sleep medications for years and years. It's tough sometimes, But basically, if you can, have a day that you're really productive, you're very active, you're busy, you're getting your exercise, you're using your brain a lot, you should be tired at the end of the day. And then you want to have good sleep hygiene and good sleep habits as well. Turn the screens off, phones, TVs, computers, all that stuff, at least a half hour to an hour before bedtime.
Have you seen that as one of the biggest kind of detriments to good sleep?
Oh, sure. I mean, there's even jokes on. Yeah, there's even jokes online. I mean, I saw one recently where they were like, I would do anything to get 8 hours of sleep. And they were like, how about go to sleep 8 hours before you want to wake up? And they're like, no, I'm not going to do that. It's like,
that's perfect.
How about turn your phone off right before, half an hour before bed? No. And they're like, no, I wouldn't do that. And it's like, how about like 1 minute? No, not going to do it. I mean, we're all, kind of now in this culture where you got to see what's going on with everything in the world. But phones are not a natural thing. Mm-hmm. Again, going back to nature, for all of human history up until just recently, we had no phones or no screens.
Right.
I mean, it's that artificial light, that like blue shifted mm-hmm. light, basically, that's kind of tricking our brains. We see that blue light and we think of daytime sky, as opposed to, you can imagine our ancestors sitting around a fire somewhere and it's more orange, kind of red color, which are kind of sleep colors.
So what I'm hearing is change my phone background to orange or red.
Yeah, right, exactly. And there are apps that'll do that for you. I mean, it's it's okay. It's
all right.
Kind of a Band-Aid on it,
The other one on this list is stress management.
Yes.
And again, that's one that I think is common sense too, but I don't know a lot of people that understand how to manage it. I think that's one of the, to me, could be one of the harder things on this list.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, every day in primary care, we talk about stress. I mean, I don't think I get through a day without somebody coming in feeling overwhelmed with stress or depression or something like that. Sometimes there's stuff you can do about it. Sometimes you can't. I mean, if you're getting stressed about world events, like, I don't know what to tell you. It's a tough situation. If it's a family member, a friend, a work situation, maybe you have a little bit more, ability to do something. But even then, I see people that say, oh, I hate my boss. And I'm like, well, I don't know. You can look for a new job or, I don't know, try to deal with it. We try to lean on the mental health professionals out there, the counselors
mm-hmm.
and therapists, and try to get them to kind of weigh in. Cognitive behavioral therapy can be helpful. I talk to my patients sometimes about meditation, mindfulness, breathing exercises, and stuff like that. There's plenty of apps for the phones.
Well, and that's and going and kind of you
mm-hmm.
kind of, we kind of bashed that technology a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, not really, but But there are obviously some very beneficial things through technology that can help you with that.
Absolutely, yeah, and those have been studied as well. One of the more well-known ones is probably Headspace. You may have heard of that.
Yes.
There's actually been studies done on that app. And even during the early days of the pandemic, when COVID started, the American Medical Association gave out free memberships to Headspace, which I had heard of it, but I had never tried it before. So I'm a member of the AMA, and so I said, all right, free membership, let me try it. And I'd actually had a roommate when I was in med school, and he was really big into meditation, and he always tried to get me to do it. And I was kind of like, it sounds like a bunch of hippie stuff. Like, I don't know. And so then when I had the free membership, I was like, all right, might as well give it a try. The work was all different, and there was days when they were like, oh, there's nobody coming in the office, stay home today. So I was like, okay, I'll give this a try. And I actually did find that it was restorative. Like, I did notice a difference. I felt calmer. I kind of tell my patients it's like it's like your brain taking a shower.
Right.
It's like that feeling after you shower, you feel nice and clean, but for your brain. And so it's nice to even spend 5 or 10 minutes or more if you have the time, just to kind of close your eyes and do some breaths, and they kind of walk you through exactly what to do.
Right.
So I recommend it to patients if you can manage it. I think the app's a couple $1 a month or something.
Oh, there you
It's
go.
nothing crazy.
Okay.
And even online, you can find free stuff. Even on YouTube, there's people that'll guide you through stuff. So
Right, and there's a lot of just the tech you wear, on your wrist anymore, your phones. They have the mindfulness stuff
tell you to
on
take
here.
a breath.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So basically, anything you do. One really simple one they call the kind of box breathing technique. And I don't know if you heard of this, but basically you breathe in for 4 seconds. So you count to 4 in your head, hold it for 4 seconds, breathe out through your mouth for 4 seconds, and then hold that for 4 seconds, and then just keep repeating it and do that for a minute or two.
A lot of people say that that's a really good way to fall asleep for some folks
absolutely.
too, if
So
you have been struggling with that.
If you're up at 2 a.m. and you can't fall asleep, you can do that
Try
in
it.
the middle of the night. You don't need to turn the light on even. Do it while you're driving. Just don't close your eyes.
The last one on here that I think is probably the most interesting one on these 6 things for lifestyle medicine. Social connection.
Yeah.
So I am kind of an introvert, really.
Yeah.
I'm fine being alone most of the time.
Yep.
Is that detrimental to my health?
I don't know. I would kind of put myself in kind of a similar category.
Okay.
I'm a runner. I like going out into the woods and run on the trails for a couple hours, and maybe I'll see like one other person.
Right.
But generally, I run by myself. And I think there can be some benefit to that. I mean, just kind of being in your own head, almost like we were talking about before. But in general, I mean, meeting with friends or family, we usually feel pretty good, assuming you have a good relationship with those folks. You can think about, maybe there's a friend you haven't seen in a while, and you catch up and you talk about like old times or talk about what you're up to. And there's a calming effect to that. Again, not to keep harping on ancient people, but we lived in tribes. Humans were not solitary individuals. If somebody was kind of out of the tribe, they didn't really live very long because there was a lot of responsibilities. We had to kind of find food or catch food or whatever the situation was, and we depended on each other. So we've kind of always been like a herd animal, so to speak. It's kind of a weird way to think about it. But we do, when they do these studies, they do show increased kind of neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, things that make us feel good when we're in a close contact, whether it's just actual physical touching or just being in the same room as people that we feel comfortable with.
So I guess that would have been my next question is how does that better your health?
Yeah.
A social connection.
I mean, think of like, the person who you feel closest to in the world. Hopefully there is somebody. I hope you have somebody. I hope everybody has somebody.
Right.
But that person, it could be your spouse, it could be a sibling, it could be a best friend. When you see that person, just being near that person tends to make you feel better, right?
Yeah.
So if I see my best friend that I've known for 20 years and we're hanging out and just doing whatever, maybe we're just out for a walk, like I can feel comfortable with that person. And so that has a calming effect on us.
So it kind of ties in a little bit to the stress management too,
absolutely.
I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
In that sense.
I mean, again, assuming you're on good terms,
right?
When you see that person, or maybe it's your spouse, you go home and give your spouse a hug,
right.
and I mean that releases dopamine, it releases oxytocin. I mean, it releases these feel-good hormones in our brain.
Right.
It helps lower stress, lowers our blood pressure, actually lowers our heart rate. So there is benefit there.
Okay,
right?
I can totally see that.
I mean, think of like, let's say your friends call you up and they're like, "Hey, this weekend we're all getting together. We're gonna go do something really fun." You probably get excited about that, right?
Maybe.
All right. I don't know your friends.
Or it's like, you know what? I've spent enough time with you during the week.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm to sit at home and alone.
If you see them too much, it might not be a good thing. But in general, I mean, imagine, or if you have kids, right? People love seeing their kids in general, right?
Yes.
So, so just that human contact, just even touching skin to skin, right?
Right.
They talk about when mothers give birth, they try to put the baby
right away,
right on the skin because they've shown that increases those neurotransmitters.
Excellent.
So kind of neat.
It is.
Yeah.
Talking with Dr. Stephen Neabore, lifestyle medicine, we kind of went through the six pillars of this that this practice is kind of based around.
Yeah.
Nutrition, physical activity, avoiding risky substances, restorative sleep, stress management, social connection. And of course, we need to stress in this podcast too that it should be going hand in hand with primary care medicine as well.
Absolutely,
right?
yes.
That's not what you call it though. Is it?
We do, primary care, outpatient medicine. I mean, when you're coming in for your wellness check, your annual physical, this is not something totally different. basically what we do is just spend more time on this.
Do you think this is going to be, 5, 10, 20 years down the road, this will be what your doctors are telling you along with everything else?
I mean, I'll say not only will it has to. I mean,
Okay.
we as a society cannot keep going at the rate that we're going on.
Right.
I mean, healthcare costs are going to exceed the total amount of money that the country makes, the total GDP or gross domestic product. I mean, we don't have enough money to keep giving people all these medications to deal with these chronic health issues. It's impossible. We cannot sustain this. So we need to make changes. And a lot of times that has to come from a systemic level or government level or advertising or marketing or whatever, however you want to think about it.
Right.
But we can't just keep putting stuff in our bodies that's going to make us sick.
Well,
I mean, we can't. It's just unsustainable.
That is about the best way we can wrap this up, I think, right there. It's perfect. Dr. Stephen Neabore, as a diplomate of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine with Monument Health. It was great to talk with you, Doctor. This was very informative. Yeah. And again, we talked about in the first podcast of this. These are simple changes to make, but at the same time, they're not easy changes to make, right? But again, they say X amount of hours, or you can start a good habit.
Yeah, even just a couple of weeks of
right.
routine, it just becomes habit.
Yeah, and then you'll want to do it all the time, and that can be the difference.
It's like brushing your teeth.
Perfect. Thank you again, Dr. Stephen Neabore. It's been great talking to you.
Thanks.